Y'all ready to get started? Yeah. Well, hey everyone, my name's Sid Bradsher, and I'm the director of Hartford ENC. We're an organization that lives here in Greenville, and we do this. We train nonprofits. We support and train and build community among nonprofits. We have a building on the corner of 14th and Evans Street, a nonprofit business center. 16 nonprofits living there. We exist to equip and empower nonprofits in our community. We work here in Beaufort County and try to be relevant for wherever folks have needs. We really believe that nonprofits can change the world. So we're trying to help nonprofits be better at what they do so they can more effectively see our communities be transformed. So that's who we are. I spend a lot of time hanging out with folks like y'all who are making a great difference in our world, and so it's an honor to be here today. And my friend Sandy Williams.
Yes. So it's actually.
Oh, sorry, Connie.
So I'm Sandy Williams. I have been working for nonprofits, business nonprofits for the last 20 years. And just recently started my grant writing business and fundraising as well. And so I've learned a lot from going to the workshops that Sid has done with Hartford ENC. So I really would like to plug his organization to you, take advantage of the things that he offers, and then also plug our business if you help with fundraising or grant writing, your person. So.
And I'd like to plug Sandy while we're plugging each other here. She's done a great job. She's been involved she worked at Building Hope, she worked at Third Street Academy, she's got a long history of engagement with nonprofits, and she brings some good experience to the table. So she's a great consultant, worked with a number of different organizations, chiefly in the grant writing space, and she is a go-getter, and really, it's been fun to see how busy she is. She just moved to school the past 6 months. So anyway, that's who we are. There's just a wide variety of folks here representing a bunch of different areas of need. Some of us are development directors, I heard community outreach coordinators. I'm trying to translate that into what do you do with fundraising, because that's what we're going to talk about today. So I know our needs are broad. Sandy and I spent some time together thinking about this. We thought, we don't know who's coming. We don't know what the needs are. It could be people that are really super interested in grants, people that are more interested in fundraiser nuts and bolts. So it's kind of hard to know what to expect. So I wanted to ask that question to kind of at least get a pulse of who's in the room. We're going to do our best to give you kind of some high-level stuff that hopefully catches all that. But really, we want you, if we have time, I know time is kind of short, but hopefully you'll find some things helpful and radical in what we share, but also maybe we'll be able to, scratch where you itch, we get a chance to talk about specific things. But our hope is, again, to do our best to kind of give you some principles that will be true no matter what, and hopefully help you move forward as you think about what it means to find resources in our world and nonprofit community. So anyway, thank you all for being here. We're grateful for the opportunity.
Yeah, as we go through all of the slides, if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand and ask us to be a little deeper on those slides, and we can ignore some of the slides that may not be as important to you all. Okay, so first of all, you're here to learn about resource development. And so most of the time you say resource development, everybody thinks development. We also, can y'all hear me? Okay. Okay, so one of the other things you want to think about is that it is not just financial, but it's also, so you want to think about the different volunteers, staff members, board members, or consultants that you could bring onto the table to help you to get the resources you need.
There's all kinds of resources, not just financial. Anybody need, y'all here mostly for money though, right? Is that who we're talking to? Just making sure. That's another word, So we're going to, again, some high-level stuff. I really believe this is true. Fundraising, effective fundraising, really hinges on clarity. We have to be clear about a number of things in order to raise money well. Especially, we talked about this kind of the who, what's, and where's. That was kind of the framework as we thought about what we'd say today. But I think really true for all of us is we have to be clear on who we are. So are we clear on who you are as an organization? Do you have a clear mission? Do you have a clear direction of what you're trying to accomplish? Do you have a plan from where you're trying to go? And you have it in your mind, but also in reality in a way that enables you to ask people with an educated and experienced manner to come alongside you to raise money. It's great to say, I really want to change the world. I want to end homelessness, or I want to serve at-risk kids. I want to meet the needs of our community. That's great. But the more we know, the more clarity we have about who we are, what we're doing, what our area of impact is, the better we're going to be able to raise money. So I just think it's a huge thing, and I'm going to give you a tool. I only make 25 of these, or maybe 20, 30 people in the room, I'm not sure. But I have some of these we have to share. I'm sorry I didn't make more, but these are it's just a tool that I think can be really helpful. This is a tool called a theory of change. And what a theory of change is just a resource, here's what you'll be looking at when you get it. So it's on the screen as well. This is a tool to help us as organizations think about what it is we do and be clear about those things so that we can communicate it in an effective way to the people we use it as a tool to help us figure out what we're doing and are we doing things right, but also as a tool to share who we are and what we're trying to do. This is helpful when you're sitting with an individual asking for money, but also it's very helpful to have this clear when you're doing great right? So it'll lay out some very specific things about who you are. And what I'll do is kind of walk us through this. On the front side is this, what you're looking at here. On the back side is Harper ENC's theory of change as an example. So the front side, again, is what I'll spend time on, but the back side is my example of how this thing works. But here's what this helps us do. We all are here, we all have a mission of some sort. We probably started because there's a problem we're trying to solve, a need we see, whatever. We all are here for some reason. There's something that's lacking in our community or in our world that we want to do something about. So then we start with this idea. We're going to help serve nonprofits. We realize nonprofits are often underserved, under-resourced, underknown, overwhelmed, all the things that might be true for a lot of nonprofits in the world. That's what we know is true. But also we have a vision. On the other end of the theory of change is the vision. We see a place where nonprofits have all the resources they ever would need. They are known in the community. They are effectively accomplishing the work that they've been called to do. And they're empowered to change things in our community in an effective, most effective way. That's kind of, so my mission, my problem is nonprofits are messy and under-resourced. My vision is they have all they need. And so how are we going to get there? The theory of change is what we believe. If we, in theory, do these things, we believe this change will occur. That's what it means. So if you're saying, gosh, it's kids in our neighborhood. They're struggling. They're not doing well in school, or whatever your mission is. It's the hungry. It's the homeless. It's whatever it is. There's a problem. And so what you're going to do as an organization, you're going to say, we're going to do these things to get to this whole ultimate vision we have. So the input, what resources are being used in this mission? What are you putting in? So someone mentioned we provide food. Right for Revival is a good example. There's food insecurity in all these places, especially in the outlying areas. There's not a grocery store. There's not enough churches to have, whatever, food pantries, etc. So y'all go to places where it's not right. That's what they do. They have buses that are upfitted like little grocery stores, and they come to places that don't have food, and so that's what they do. Their input is they have access to food. They have resources they're able to bring to the table. They've got these buses or whatever. They have access to resources and ways to distribute. That's the input. They're putting these things in. The process is you guys probably have a place you go. You have a list of, we go to these counties, we go to these places. Dirt Street School, we go to this county, we go here, we go there, we go this day, we stay for this long, we come on this, again, we have you follow what I'm doing here, I'm building a case for how we run our nonprofit. So they have resources, connections, food, access to big fancy buses. They're raising money, they've got things, they're going to bring them to certain places in certain ways. And then the things, the outputs, what the outputs are is what happens. They're able to measure how many people came on the bus, how much food they distributed, how many pounds, in different areas. So you're able to notice what you're telling your story. Why does this matter for fundraising? Having this kind of stuff figured out. Why would it matter?
You gotta sell yourself.
If you're going to tell somebody a story, ask them to join with you, isn't it nice to know what you're doing? Aren't they more likely to come alongside you if you have a plan and you have some strategy, you have some actual outputs and outcomes that you're measuring so that you can begin to raise money more effectively? You're right if you're right, Sandy. Why does this matter?
Because you want to show them the reason to pick you.
I'd love to provide food to the outlying areas, and we're going to try our best. That's great, but to say we're doing these things in this manner, on this rhythm, and these days, that makes a difference. So again, I know this might seem basic to some of us, but I also know that some of us live in a world where we don't have this figured out yet. So I'm going to say, if you're going to raise money and do it effectively, the more clear we can be about who we are, what we're doing, and what we're measuring, then we're going to begin to see more of the outcomes. Because the outcomes are the things you hope to see happen. Hopefully the outcomes are there's more food provided in these areas that are desperate. For us, Hartford ENC, we or the sheet. I need the sheet for a second. So a couple things we do. So on the back side of this thing, the input of the 4 areas we focus on. We're trying to build relationships with nonprofits, help them connect with each other. We're providing training, events, and coaching. We are providing some support services, and we're trying to drive community engagement. And across the topmost row, relationships. What do we do in our process? One-to-one meetings on Friday mornings. We have events. We do training and social and networking events. We have a nonprofit hub. Things we count number of meetings, number of people there, the relationships built, event attendance, those kind of things. The outcomes we're hoping for is connections are being built. Minimize redundancy in services. There's not so many people doing the same thing in the same neighborhood. And ultimately, the impact ultimately is that there's unity among organizations, there's collaboration, there's growth of impact. So you kind of get the idea how this works. We all have some sort of theory that we're applying. We cover a wide variety of organizations doing a wide variety of things. The more clear we are about what we're doing and how we're doing it, the more effectively we'll be able to ask you to join us and also to evaluate how we're doing. Are these things working? You know, sometimes we realize, we tried this, we had this plan, we did these things, and really didn't get where we wanted to go, so we're going to go back and start over. Sandy has an example.
So one example was when I was working with Building Co. We had a lot of students who were very low academically, and it was because of COVID. So they came in very low reading scores. And so we thought, we've got to solve this problem. What are we going to do? And so one of the things that we did then was we developed an academic committee. And instead of calling it a remediation program, we called it an academic scholars program. We didn't want to focus on the negative, we wanted to focus on the positive. What do we want our outcome to be? And so the process was then to start a pilot remediation program. We didn't have the resources to develop this, so we got an intern from ECU. She came in and she helped to develop a curriculum with us in combination with the academic committee. And she piloted it with 2 students. Over the course of the semester, we saw that those 2 students' reading scores went up 2 to 3 levels. And as a result, we were able to go out into the community and say, we need funding for this. It's effective, but we don't have a teacher to be able to teach all of the students. We can't cover all the students with one intern. We need somebody to come in, and we need to be able to hire somebody who can come in and do this for us. And so we were able to fundraise and be able to hire somebody to come in and do this because we could show that our outcomes were really good. Now, the impact then would be, the outcome would be the increased reading scores. The impact would be we had happy parents. We had lower behavioral issues in the after-school program because these kids were being successful. And the teachers told us, we're communicating with the teachers that they were doing better in school and there were less behavioral issues. And so our impact then in the last would be lower dropout rates in high school. So we, as you go through this problem, if you can think through this process, you're going to be able to solve your problem, but you're also going to be able to raise money to help support that solution.
So anyway, it's a simple idea in theory, but I think it's something we can often miss. And hopefully this tool will help you, A, tell your story and present facts to more effectively raise money, but also to just see, we're trying these things. If you're keeping up with your outputs, if you're measuring the things that are happening, you're going to see some things are working, some things aren't. So this is not just obviously it's not just a fundraising tool, it's a strategic tool. It helps you consider programs, their effectiveness, those kind of things. But again, if we're going to raise money well, we have to be clear about who we are and what we're doing. That's a long way to say that, but I just want to put that tool in front of you because I think it can be really instructive to look at your programs you're offering and measuring them and think, are we measuring, are we getting where we want to go? If we said we want to see our community changed by nonprofits growing their impact, the question is, are people coming to think? Are the things we doing working? Is it making a difference? If not, we need to go back to the drawing board. But if they are working, that was more effective to ask folks for money, to invite people to willingness and speech and so forth. Anyway, just a little tool for you. Clarity doesn't end there. Clarity also, very importantly, needs to be on your needs, right, Sandy?
Yes. So you need to know what your plan is. If you get to that plan, in order to get to that plan, you need to figure out what your needs are. So really sitting down, taking the time and thinking about what your needs are and how you can accomplish your goals through meeting those.
Do you mean needs like money?
Yeah, it could be needs. Money could be need, but it could be needs like. Oh, do you have something? Okay.
It's not just money.
Yeah, so you have to think through your budget. You need to make sure the right people are in place. You need to make sure your program's in order, and you're going to need to make sure that you have capacity for it. So one example is I worked for an organization, and they wanted to do some fundraising for bands.
What?
Bands. So the example was. The idea was we need to get more kids to the after-school program. So they said, okay, we need 6 vans in order to transport the kids to the after-school program. So we started raising money for these bands. We got money for 3 bands, but then realized halfway through we didn't have enough staff to cover the care of the students once they got to the program. And so 6 bands was way too high goal. We didn't really think through the whole process of, what are we going to do with the 6 bands once we get them? Yeah, all the kids will come, but we only have 3 staff members, and how are you going to be able to provide for all of them? So if you have your whole structure in place, you need to think about what's going to happen once we get the kids there. What's going to happen once we, whatever your need is. If it's for food, you're going to get the donations for all the food, but are you going to have the resources to distribute that food throughout your
So it says, do not chase shiny objects. What is that?
So one example is, so if you think about a shiny object, say you have an opportunity for a grant, and here's another example. So we were, when I was working for Third Street Academy, we were thinking about maybe starting an aquaponics program.
What? Who knows what aquaponics is in here? Wait, more than I thought.
Yes. So it's fish who feed the plants and the plants who provide the food, or whatever, when you were selling flowers or whatever. So the whole idea was to start this program where the kids could learn about science, with this aquaponics program. And so I spent, I don't know how many hours writing a grant for, I think it was like $300,000 in order to start this aquaponics program. Come to find out, why does a startup school need an aquaponics program?
Because they had $300,000.
Yes, we were looking at the $300,000 thinking, wow, this will increase our budget. But fortunately, we didn't get the grant because if we had, we would have wasted all this time and energy. So what we really needed to focus on was making sure the academics were good for the students and making sure we had the right teachers in place. So don't chase a grant or a funding opportunity just because it's a lot of money. Make sure you have the capacity to be able to do what you're asking the funder to fund.
Clarity about our needs, so we can really understand what we're asking, but also clarity about our capacity. And sometimes for us, it's hard to say no to. It's hard to say no to a shiny $300,000 or this great grant or this opportunity, to expand to a new community, but we may not need to do that. I think that, again, that's just part of the fundraising world is we need to be wise about those things, and hopefully we have people that are with us, but I know how it goes. A lot of us are kind of solopreneurs maybe. We're just in there doing our best to try to figure this thing out, and again, I think the more we can be clear about those things, the better. So again, clarity is an important word, and I think in our world, that being clear on those things can make or break you. And aren't you glad you spent all that time on the grant and going in?
Yes, well, I learned about grant writing.
And I felt that.
Well, and I have another example too for this one. So you want to think about too and Sid does a really great workshop on this 5-year, 10-year plan. So I think it's really good for you to sit down and think about what your 5 and 10-year plan is. And if you're going to start a new program, it's really important to start it as a pilot to see if it's effective. To see, number one, if you're going to get funding for it, to see if you got the right people in place, like we did with the Academic Scholars Program. We started as a pilot really small to see if it's effective, and then when you go to funders, it can say as an effectiveness, or you can say, this is not working, and this is really not a part of our initiative vision. So taking the time to really think through what your 5 and 10-year plan is
Which is back to this tool. It's a theory. In theory, if we do this remediation program, these kids are going to benefit, and we're going to be able to find the sources to do it. They didn't know until they got there and tried it. We would have tried with a $100,000 grant. It just makes sense to. Anyway, I know we're preaching to on whatever, but that's true. What about this?
Yeah, so there are a lot of different ways that you can raise funds. So one is through donations. There are different categories of donors that are out there. So one-time donors, monthly donors, churches, corporations, civic groups. Those are donors that really, there are a lot of people out there that really love to give. So asking for all of these people to come on board with you. But one of the things, and then grants, donations or reverend grants. One of the things that is really good is to have a strategic plan in place for fundraising. To look at how many people are actually giving in these different categories and decide how you want to increase that giving among those different categories, and then come up with a strategy on how to increase those different giving categories throughout the year. So for example, or if you just go back, just a minute. If you buy, like say you have 20 monthly donors, and monthly donors are really the heart and soul of the giving within your organization, because you can count on a giving. So if you have 20, you may have a goal next year, I want to increase this to 25, or I want to increase it to 50. You have to set a plan in place in order to figure out how to do that. Are you going to have one-on-one meetings? Are you going to have a lunch and learn where people come to your organization? Are you going to have a fundraising event? So setting a plan in place for how you're going to engage these type of donors is super important.
So in the room, how many of y'all, raise your hand if you're more grant-oriented as far as your fundraising goes? The rest of you more fundraiser, event-oriented? Kind of a mix of some of the people in the middle.
So is there a healthy mix? Is there an optimal mix, or is it by organization, by mission?
Well, I would say what felt healthy a year ago might not feel so healthy anymore, right? So many grants are out there that are kind of gone, either gone away, or there's a lot of question about whether they'll be sustainable now, especially government-oriented grants. So I don't know. I think it varies. It certainly varies from your sector. Some educational oriented. For instance, education oriented nonprofits are way more grantable, way more grant funded than faith oriented. So it depends on what you do. I think there's a sweet spot in there. I'm just not sure what it is. I think that scale moves. Here's a typical fundraising pyramid of this would be more of a general small to medium nonprofit. So, but again, these are just standards. These are standards, but it'll fluctuate depending on who you are, what world you live in. Here's a good picture of what can be the breakdown of your donors. Now, for something like for us, this is pretty true for us. Really is pretty true for us, but probably for I imagine right from the Bible, you guys probably get more grants. So your grant piece is bigger. So anyway, every organization, this is going to be true in some manner for you. And what influences these things? What would make you?
So I think your strategy. If you have a strategy to go out and say your individual donors are only 20% at this point, and you want to increase it to 65%, you put a strategy in place to figure out how to engage those donors. If you want to increase your grants because you have a new program that you think grants would support, you put that strategy in place. So whatever your objective is, whatever you've decided that you want to do to increase those donations, that's what you want to figure out. What are the strategies that you could do, like one-on-one meetings, or maybe going to a missions committee in a church and presenting what you're doing. Maybe going to corporate donors. Go to a lot of corporations now have a missions arm or a philanthropy arm to their organization now. So finding those organizations that are wanting to give money away. There are tons of people out there that have to give money away, or that really have a heart to give money away. So finding those people, I think, is really important.
So again, just hit it again because it's important. Who you are, what you're doing, where you're going. That's kind of your idea, your theory, your change. This is who we are. And then now we're getting to the how. So how are we going to raise money? Well, there are lots of ways to raise money. But what fits you? We're all different. Each of our nonprofits is unique. The area we serve, the capacity we have. So again, it takes time to do research. Sandy said several times, it's still so important for us to have a plan. It's so important for us to have a plan of what we're doing, but again, also how we're going to raise money. Again, we say we just want to raise money from wherever the money comes. That's great. It's more likely to be, you're more likely to be effective if you have a specific plan. We're going to go after these kind of things. So setting goals, doing research, seeing what the norms are in your world, in your area of impact, that might help you. It's really important to think about your how. So speaking of plans.
Sid.
Yes, sir.
Maybe I missed it. I don't know. What's a general donor compared to
Thank you. Good question.
an individual donor?
Right. So this is broken down. Major donors would be someone. So for us as an organization, we set a certain level that's a major donation. So for us, it might be $1,000 a year or $2,000. It could be $50, depending on your organization. So that's your major donors. General donors would be $1 to $9.99 for us. So the majority of our money, 65% of our money comes from people who get more than $1,000 a year. It's, again, this scale would slide for your organization depending on who you are and what you do, but I think having a plan for that is real important. So again, Sandy said this a little bit, but looking at your history. Who's given in the past? Where's our money come from? How does it break down? The more we know about what we receive, the more likely we'll be able to strategize about what we might receive in the future. So again, categorizing your donors, thinking through what, what areas you might not be touching very well. I think monthly donors is a really important thing. That can be such an impactful aspect of our fundraising plan. So good question. Any other questions about that? I'm sorry to blow by that.
Thank you.
Sure. So, plan.
Yes, so I think this is something that's super important is you get in the right mindset. So we've decided who we're going to target as donors. We've decided which of the categories we want to increase. And so once you get that in place, then as you're going to talk to different donors or foundations, you want to have the idea of being transformational instead of transactional.
What's that mean?
So you want to think about not just saying, hey, give me money, walking away, and then just using their money. You want to develop relationships with the people who are your donors. That's why a lot of campaigns are called Friendsgiving, or they're friends of, or they're partners. Those are terms that are used to help you to realize these are people who are walking alongside of you. They're not just the people who a bank is giving you money. These are people who are coming alongside of your organization, and so you want to develop relationships with them in order to continue that relationship. And then you also want to help them to catch your vision. So as you go, if some of you were in the storytelling workshop before, you tell your story, you get them to catch your vision, and then they're going to open up their wallet and say, you want to follow that? And I'm not sure. Okay, so yeah, so then the next piece then, and we're going to talk about this a little later, is you want to spend the time to thank them. So we'll cover that a little bit more. But so you want to have that relationship with these people, not just give them money and we'll talk to you again next time you get them.
So, the more effective fundraising is characterized by, the how should be characterized through relationships, not just transactions, transformation versus transaction. How long do we have? We go to 11:45. Go to 11:30? Okay.
Okay. Yes. Okay, so you want to then create learning opportunities. So major way to do this is to promote this through social media. That's been really a game changer for us to be able to get our message out in the community. So you do social media, you can have news media come and cover your story. A lot of news media personalities are looking for stories to cover, so you can just call them up. I know here in town, Kim Grizzard with the newspaper loves to come cover stories. Sarah Marr with WST, she'll come and like anything you want just to get your message out. And then send your message in newsletters too. It's really great idea to do at least a quarterly newsletter to let your donors and the different people that are friends of your organization know exactly what's going on with your organization. And then you want to try to find ways to communicate in a way that's going to touch their heart, but also help them to realize that what you're doing is impactful. So you can do that through a campaign. You can have a campaign like, for example, you could have, if you're trying to get scholarships for different students, that can be a campaign that you're raising. You're trying to raise $50,000 for my scholarships for each student to be able to come to your after-school program. Or it could be an event, like a fundraiser, or you could have an event in the community where you go out and you go to a health fair or a community fair. Or you can have an event, like a fundraising event, like a banquet, where you're trying to gather a lot of people and share your message.
There's lots of ways to raise money. So again, I know we're going fast, and there's so much. We can talk about all this for several hours. I think so. I'm realizing, gosh, this is a lot of content. But here's the thing. Clarity about who you are, what you do, where you're going. We really have to have that figured out. This is what we're doing. This is how we're making an impact in our community. And then clarity about how you want to raise money. And that's part of this plan idea. Is okay, we want to raise money. It's going to be 50% grants and 40% individuals and 10% corporate, or whatever. You figure those things out and begin to build a plan based on those things. So when you build a plan, if we're trying to raise 50% corporate, then 40% corporate, we need to have some corporate events in our plan. You know what I'm saying? This is kind of how it works. So you decide how you're going to do it, you build a plan to go after those things. You talk about how you promote it, et cetera. And the last thing is probably the most important thing we'll talk about this morning is the idea of follow-up. She already said it a little bit, but I can't say enough how much it matters for us to follow up with people. I had a conversation with a friend who's an executive director this week. She's new to her role, and she's part of an organization that's been here a long time. She goes, I was trying to call our top 10% of our donors over the next 2 months. And she met with someone this week who was a top 10% donor for an organization, and the lady reluctantly met with her. She wasn't sure she wanted to meet. She came reluctantly, and this lady had been giving since like 2007. Was one of the top 10 donors in her organization, and she hadn't heard from anybody in the organization in 3 years. So this is a new executive director coming in and realizing, wait a minute, you haven't heard from anyone? She had fallen off the newsletter list, she hadn't been contacted, she had one of their top donors. Ladies and gentlemen, friends and family, that should not happen in our world. And I know it probably does for all of us. Somehow somebody falls through the crack or something, we miss something, but golly, please, 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 if you're thinking about how to raise money well, please have a plan for how you're going to care for, communicate with, and thank you donors. I can't say that enough. It's so important. That was a striking example. But here's the cool thing. She had a great conversation with this lady. I bet the next time, she said, nobody's ever called me. And so for the ED to come sit down with her and have a conversation, not ask her for money, made all the difference in the world. And I'm sure the next time she asks her for money, she's going to get it, probably get twice as much because of that little simple effort. So again, that's just, it can be so instructive for all of us, because I know we all live in that world, but that kind of stuff happens. Pay attention, don't let it happen. Oh, so we have another tool. Hey, here's another tool. This is, again, hopefully something will be helpful in this way. Again, I don't have enough. I made 25, I'm sorry. My new friend Mike told me to share this stuff. I just met him. He's a great guy. So this is just a tool, but I think anytime you have something you can put your hands on and think about, this is basically just a template, but here's an idea for 2025, here's 2024, a fundraising development calendar. And here's, again, it's just a tool, but here, what I want to point out at the bottom, it says, you see the gray section at the bottom, that's kind of what we'll do during the year. It says non-profit fundraising cycle, you think it in January, you get your board pledge. You see how this works going across? So looking across, building a calendar for what you're going to do. You already know what you're going to do. Who knows when your fundraisers are going to be this year? Raise your hand. They're probably on a calendar somewhere, right? And you probably, hopefully you have, if you have a banquet that's going to be in October, you probably back it up to, by June, I've got to nail down my place, right? I've got to figure out those kind of things. Well, hopefully you'll have that figured out. But what about your campaigns? What about if, we're going to start a campaign for the academic scholars? Again, whatever you're doing this year, put it on a calendar, think about it, and then look at it through the lens of how you might raise money for it. If it's a fundraising event, if it's something cool that happens every year, like some of us have summer camps, for instance. Summer camps happen, we get these kids and they have these 3-week experiences, pretty tremendous experience, probably a great thing to expose your donors to. How does the regular ebb and flow of your year, the events you have, the things that happen on the regular, how might that be an opportunity for you to strategically go after your donors, to strategically communicate something about what's happening, because you're going to do it anyway. And if you're paying attention, you think, all right, in terms of our donors, how are we engaging with these folks through the year? Here's our events, here are the things that happen, this happens here, this happens there. Some of them are very specifically fundraisers, so you kind of get that. But what about the other things during the year? What about the other regular events, ebbs and flows, highlights, whatever, celebrations? What can you build across the year, and specifically targeting different parts of your funding strategy on the left column? What can you do to maximize those things? So it's just a tool, but I think this can really be helpful in a practical way. It's great for us to have a plan. It's great to put it in front of our board and say, hey, by the way, don't forget we're doing these things, and we really need you, in April and in October. And by the way, we're going to do a year-end fundraising event, and we're going to need you to help us write letters. That's the kind of stuff. You have a plan, you build it, you look at it, you know what's going to happen, put it in front of your board at the board meetings and talk about what's coming up. You're so much more likely to accomplish those things. Take time, think it through, put it on the map.
Well, and one way to make it happen is if you gather the right people. So I know when I was in my position as development director, I felt like I had to do it all by myself. And so I couldn't. And so what we ended up doing is get the board on board, with helping with fundraising, get a fundraising committee in place and an event planning committee in place. And these are all different people who have different gifts and abilities and can help you to really accomplish what you want to accomplish throughout the year. So I think the fundraising committee can be kind of the brain behind it. They can think through what exactly you're going to do, help you with strategic planning, and then the event planning committee can be the person that actually carries out what you're hoping to do. So if you are trying to do it alone, especially if you're the executive director trying to fundraise, run the organization, and then do all of this, it's almost impossible. So you want to try to get all the people in place that can actually help you carry out everything that you want to do. And I think one of the tools that I used several times was your circle of influence. You get people to sit down and think about who the people are that you know that you could share this message to, and you think about where those circles of influence are. So, for example, it could be, a civic group that you're involved in, or a church that you're involved in, a Bible study you may attend, or if you're young, a mother's group that you're going to. Those are your church. You can think about all of those places and all the people that you know at those places and try to get them in the role side of you to help you to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish.
Fundraising is overwhelming, especially if it's your job and your paycheck depends on it. So the more we can engage other people right into the story. But again, I think having clarity about who you are, what you're doing, and having a clear plan, and really looking at what you have. What do you have so far? What's our current status? What's our giving history? Who is already at the table? And looking at those things, are we taking care of the things we have already? Are we dealing with the low-hanging fruit? Have we reached back to the folks that gave last year? All those kind of questions, making sure you're paying attention to what is, and then thinking about who we invite to the table to more effectively do the things that are in front of us. We have about 5 minutes left. Do y'all have any questions about this? Sandra, we'll talk a little bit about grants. But before we go to grants, do you might have any other questions or thoughts about just kind of generally speaking?
I agree. Should you keep nonprofit separate from the church?
It depends on your structure and organization. I would point you to my friend Watsy Sutton, who lives right over here at this table. From pointing of view, they are an organization that's decided to split off from the church for various reasons. She can speak to that, so maybe afterwards I could connect on that for sure. So I think it depends on your situation. I know she's an example of somebody that knows that, not throwing them in the best place. That's a good one. Any other questions?
I just want to say the transformational average, you have a large donor. Tell us. We see your transactional app. They want to tell if you do something transformational. So it's priceless you nice that they see what you're, that's also nice, unexpected that does. Those two parts you come up so often.
Don't underestimate the heart of your givers. I think that's a real important thing to consider. And what you bring to the table. You as nonprofit leaders, as ministers, all the different people we are in this room, you bring something to the table. Even though you feel like I asked this rich guy for money or whatever it is, how it feels sometimes on our end, but we bring something to the table. It's access to meaning, it's access to impact, it's a chance to leverage their resources in a meaningful way. So people are just sitting on stuff, they don't know what to do with it. We can help. So again, I know it's kind of hard to feel that way when you're standing in that awkward moment, but it's really true. You bring value to the table, even to the people that have all the value in their pocket. I think it's really important to believe that. It's true, but you might bring transformation to their lives. I absolutely believe it.
Well, and I think it's really important to go with the idea that this person wants to give. They're in a meeting with you, you're talking with them because they're interested in what you're doing and they have the resources to help you. And so for you to sit back and say, I know you don't really want to give, but, we would really love that for you to help. But that's not how you should approach it. You should approach with, I know you want to come alongside this organization and here are the ways that you can give. Have that positive outlook. Like, there are a lot of very generous people out there. And the same thing with grants and foundations. If you think about writing a grant to a foundation, they have to give money. They're just trying to find which organization to give it to. And so they're really on your side. Like, they want to find new organizations and become open that you're going to be that one, so not to be looking. So really come with a positive. If you've got a really great organization, a really great mission and vision for your organization, promote it shamelessly. You should not feel shamed into asking. you should be encouraged that there are people out there ready to talk about it.
So we have very short time to talk about it, so maybe
So I really don't think we've got time to cover this, but maybe just, let's see. Okay, I think this is probably the most important slide out of the whole grant writing recognition. It's very similar to what we covered as far as fundraising goes. You need to have a plan in place. You need to make sure you know what you're doing and don't go after that shiny object. You need to make sure that you are focused with your mission when you're providing the answers to the questions on a grant application. You're not creating a few programs so you can get funding, and you're really trying to pursue new areas that strengthen your cash flow. So really think through those issues as you're grant writing. And then, again, back to the van idea where we were trying to raise funds for 6 vans but didn't have the people in place to take care of their children. Make sure you have the capacity to spend the funds that you're going to receive from these organizations.
a couple of examples of folks who got a very big grant from the state or whomever else, and they weren't ready for it, and it really ruined their organization. You know, put them back, set them back, it gave them a bad name in the giving circles, and so many different things. I have a couple of really specific examples, but again, it's just be careful. I think it's such an important thing because again, it's easy to be enamored with money or an opportunity or gosh, this potential deal that's out there. But if you're not ready for it, if it's not in your mission, you don't go after it. Don't go after it.
Well, we got maybe a minute or two. Does anybody have any additional questions?
We just had a comment to add with regard to cleaning up more donors or major donors, stream of funding. Don't forget that if people are working for a company that provides a matching grants, matching gifts, so you just need to alert donors and through your social media or your newsletter to let people know that you're able to accept a matching gift. And the other one would be to let people know if they are age 73 or above that they're required to take income distribution from their retirement funds. And so those can be gifted to your organization as well. So these are monies that they don't really need if their day-to-day life to live on, but it could be instrumental in doing part of their guarantee.
And I think that's really important to share at end of year. We didn't even talk about end of year giving, which is huge. If you could, throughout your social media, your newsletters, however you communicate to your donors, that October or December is a huge time when your organization can raise a lot of funds. So spending that time talking about the IMDs or plans giving or different ways to give at the end of the year. Because people have to give money in order to lower their taxes. So that's a really great time of year to have a fundraiser or a push for giving.
Quick question. So many different brand sources or options. You have a couple of tips on how to go in and use or find the best brands to go after?
Yes, so I use several tools to kind of narrow down. Yeah, so Instrumental is the major one that I use and it's expensive, but there's GrantStation. It's actually very similar to Instrumental. I actually like their layout a little better. It's so much cheaper. And they also have a free version of it. Grant Gopher is another one. I think that's like, it's really cheap. And then Canada GuideStar has a free version. And grants, as you're going for federal grants, grants.gov is free. You can just search there. So those are different ways to search. But in there, you can put in what your priorities are, and then it kind of narrows down where where you're located. Those kind of things will narrow down search. But then you've also got to think about is what you're doing aligning with them? So you scour their website and try to think about, okay, what are their priorities? As far as it's not, you don't pursue it any further. And then understanding their eligibility requirements. Like if you're not a 501c3 organization and they only fund 501c3 organizations, then you gotta think about that. A lot of times if you're doing a capital campaign, you wanna look, do they fund capital campaigns? A lot of organizations, or a lot of foundations do, but a lot of them don't too, so look at that. And then also go back and look at who they funded in the past. Is your organization similar to that organization? And if so, pursue that grant. If not, if you're like way off the map, then wouldn't pursue that. Does that help? Yes, say that.
So, anyway, fundraisers is a lot to it, right? But it's worth it because hopefully we're raising money for something that matters. And I just, again, want to encourage you all that what you do makes a difference and you bring value to this world. You bring value to the people you're pursuing for money. It's just true. And I need to hear that. I need to hear it, so I know y'all need to hear it too. What you're doing matters, and the people you serve matter. And there are people in this world that need to get involved in that, and you bring an opportunity for them to have a fuller life by giving themselves away. So, if anything, I want to say that. But back to the beginning, clarity is so important. Don't miss being clear about who you are, what you're doing, where you're going, and have a plan. You want to raise money well, have a plan. We'd be happy to be resources. Again, I'll sit with Hartford and say, I forgot to bring my cards. But you can find me. Sandy, Vision Bridge Strategy, she sure has some cards or something. We'd be happy to help if we can. But again, I'm just grateful for you all, what you're doing. Thanks for coming, for being here today, and you have a great rest of the day.